Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is an installment of Top Tarot Trumps, the BR to Masha over at Musings by Masha, who I will link below as always. And I am so excited to finally be at the Moon card, my favorite major arcana card. Insofar as it's possible to love, one card more than the rest, I think that for so many of us, what we love about tarot is the system and the well-roundedness of tarot as a divinatory tool. But if I had to pick a favorite major arcana, it would be the Moon card without question. And I've been having a very Moon card themed day today as I just chatted with Benny over at the Fool's Apprentice about the Moon card. Benny's doing a one card study video for every card in the tarot deck, so he will end up with 78 videos, each featuring a different guest, talking about how they read the card, how they incorporate attention to symbolism and some of their favorite cards. And so I had so much fun chatting with Benny about the Moon. I'm not sure which video is going to come out first, whether it will be this Top Tarot Trumps or if it will be Benny's video about the Moon card where I come on as a guest. Either way, as soon as it's available, I will link Benny's video in the description box below. Do go check him out and, take a look at this series that he's doing because it's really amazing. And it's going to be such an amazing community resource when this series is complete. It already is. So I really appreciate Benny for welcoming me and letting me talk about my favorite card. The Moon card for me is a very special one. I mean, the 18 in Aquamarine 18 refers to the Moon. I am a Pisces sun, and of course, the Moon card is associated with Pisces. The Moon is exalted in Taurus, and I have a natal Moon in Taurus. The Moon, both, as a tarot card and as in astrology terms, a planet, is important to me, is important to my practice. And so I have lots of thoughts about what the Moon means. And some of how I think of the Moon card draws from tarot books and tarot learning and has to do with, the unknown, has to do with the liminal, has to do with mysteriousness, has to do with illusions, fantasy. And some of what inevitably makes its way into my reading with the Moon card comes from astrological studies. So I think of the Moon as having to do with receiving, as the Moon receives the light from the sun and then reflects it back to us. The Moon having to do with the body, the Moon having to do with cycles and things that have cycles and things that are changeable. The Moon having to do with water, as the Moon is at home in Cancer, and the Moon card is associated with Pisces, the cardinal and mutable water signs, respectively. There's a lot of water symbolism there, which brings in emotion and intuition and the spiritual. I think of the Moon as a really magical card. And I think that the Moon can sometimes, as a card, be depicted overly negatively, and particularly depicted overly negatively in contrast to or in dichotomy with the sun. The visibility and clarity and illumination of the sun being upheld, the reason and rationality of the sun being upheld over the emotionality and the unclarity and elusiveness almost of the Moon. And I think that is troublesome. I think that hierarchy has a lot to do with the way that these cards are gendered, or rather have gender ascribed to them in some contexts at the very least. And so for me, I think of the Moon not just in terms of illusions that could lead astray, that could lead, somewhere that you don't want to go in a dark path, but also in terms of freedom. That the moonlight and darkness can give, the cover that darkness can give in terms of being a space to engage in practices that are taboo in various kinds of ways, right? And so the moon means a lot of things to me, and insofar as the moon has to do with imagination, and imagination is something that even A.E. Waite talks about the moon having to do with imagination. Having to do with imagination means having to do with possibility, having to do with being able to think about ways that the world could be otherwise. Right? And so that makes it an extraordinarily important card to me, thinking about the moon in terms of possibility. I think of the moon in terms of magic. I think of the moon, it is such an incredible card. So I'm very excited. And I have favorite cards, and now I've rambled on for a while because I'm still just very excited about the chat I just had about the moon card. So I'm not going to keep going, or else I'll start repeating myself from things I've shared in that context. But I have 6 favorite moon cards to show you. And I'm going to share them maybe in the order in which ones that are closest to the Smith-Waite depiction of the moon I'll start with, and then I'll get further away as I go. Roughly. Very roughly. Anyway, there's a lot of beautiful moon cards. The first one that I will show is from Afro Tarot 2 by Jessie Ujazi. This moon card, I just love how big the moon is. And you can see here that all of that traditional symbolism of the Smith-Waite is there. You have the towers there, and the moon itself is huge there. And then you have 2 animals down here at the bottom, and you have 3 animals really, two mammals, and 1 crustacean there at the bottom. And I'm not usually a collage deck person. I know collage decks are super, super popular, and lots of people are really, really into collage decks. I don't tend to be one of those humans, but this deck is amazing. And I hope that it comes back into print because it's such a great deck to work with. And I just really like how the moon is kind of, for lack of better language, down to earth here. The moon is large, and its presence looms in this card in ways that I think are really interesting. So I think that that's a really beautiful moon card. Really, really beautiful. The next moon card I have chosen is the Mindscapes Tarot by John Rice. This is a majors only deck. And here you can see there's a outline of maybe a dog, maybe a wolf up here howling at the moon. And you have the pathway leading off into the moonlight. And this moon, like the Smith-Waite moon, is a waxing crescent. And yeah, you get a little bit of that symbolism there. There aren't the 2 towers. There aren't there aren't some of the details, but there's a lot of the same feeling, I think. And this, I think, just captures moonlight so beautifully, and this deck is just stunning, all of these being paintings. It does have the Pisces glyph down here in the bottom corner to remind you, if you're someone who reads with correspondences, that is there. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful painting that makes me think of wandering off into the moonlight. And it makes me think of some beautiful places that I've gotten to camp or hike in the evening as well. The next moon that I will show is from the Tarot of the North Atlantic. Here the moon is a full moon. And this one has what looks to be a little crustacean coming out of the water there. But other than that, it's mostly just landscape and water. And this, of course, is themed around the North Atlantic and the creatures that live in the North Atlantic. And so, of course, the water and watery colors are very prominent in ways that I think are really beautiful. I really like how the white thread, this deck is embroidered. I really like how the white thread here has been used to capture the moonlight on the water. I think that that's really pretty and really effective in the way that the different pieces of the hillside are outlined in the white thread. And there are different beads sewn in to be stars. I just think that that's really beautiful too. I like when the water is emphasized. The next moon that I have is from the Luminous Void Tarot. And this one, is maybe a minimalist moon, but I like how the watercolor style of the artwork in this deck has captured the kind of textures of the moon, and some of the craters and unevenness of the moon's surface. I think that that's really interesting, and I like that the water is included, and the water feels like it could be a path leading away into the unknown, but it's definitely water. And I just think that the starkness is really beautiful and interesting. It's all about the moon in this card, with nothing else around it, and I think that's an interesting depiction. And this card kind of stands out in this deck in some ways because this deck is very colorful. A lot of the cards have, a full rainbow's worth of color in their artwork, and this one has comparatively few compared to some of the others, and so that does make it stand out in a spread. Now, no one will be surprised, I don't think, that one of the cards that I've chosen as a favorite moon is from the Naturescapes. As I've mentioned, any kind of nature-oriented card in the deck, like the star, the moon, the sun, I have a hard time not picking all of my photographic decks, because what is more amazing than the moon? What is more amazing than the night sky full of stars? Of course, artists capture these things in all kinds of beautiful ways, but the thing itself being captured in a photo, there's just something extra special about. And I really like, I'm not sure where this photo is taken geographically, but the landscape looks to me to be sandy, but the sandiness can look watery, and so I think it does have that quality of uncertainty and elusiveness that the moon can have in terms of the card's meaning. And I find it interesting that the moon is actually cut off at the top, so you actually just get half of a moon in this moon card, with the landscape playing more of a role, which emphasizes to me moonlight and the way that the moon reflects light onto the land that illuminates things partially, but not fully. So I think that card is really beautiful. And finally, the last one that I am going to share is from the Anima Mundi Tarot. This card and a few others were what made me really want to have this deck. And this is an indie deck that I've had for quite a long time in my collection and that I really love. There are just a handful of cards in the major arcana for this deck that are landscape based, like this. A lot of the cards in this deck are animal focused, but there's a few, the world card as well, that really are focused on the landscape or the sky or a forest, things like this, without a specific animal or plant being really foregrounded. They're really about the scene, and I think that this is just really, really effective. You get the moonlight, the way that the moon is peeking out of the clouds there, I think is really beautiful. The way that the light hits the waves, I think is really beautiful. And the moon, for me, a moon card just needs a moon. And a lot of the ones that I like the best in my collection are cards that really just, it's a moon and doesn't need a lot of else around it to bring up for me all of these associations and meanings and thoughts and reflections and possibilities that the moon can illuminate for me in a reading. So those are my moons. I would love to know what some of your favorite moons are. Please tell me in the comments below. So again, I have had Afro Tarot 2, the Mindscapes Tarot, maybe it's easier over here actually, the Tarot of the North Atlantic, the Luminous Void Tarot, Naturescapes Tarot, and finally Anima Mundi Tarot. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you of course to Masha for starting this tag. I will see you all again soon. Thank you for watching.